Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, et bienvenue chez mon 8e épisode sur la grammaire du français. Hello everyone and welcome to my 8th episode on French grammar. In this episode I will examine direct object pronouns. The good news is that English has direct object pronouns. The bad news is that understanding direct object pronouns requires a bit of an understanding of verbs. So I'm going to start by talking about verbs even though this is my series on nouns. There are a few different classes of verbs, but the one I'll be looking at today is a class called transitive verbs, or monotransitive verbs. All verbs take a number of arguments. The first argument that a verb can take is the subject. And in English and French, all conjugated verbs will take a subject. Some verbs can be used with just a subject and no other arguments. These verbs are called intransitive. Other verbs, however, have a second argument. This second argument is commonly a direct object. Verbs that can take a direct object are called transitive verbs. To demonstrate an intransitive verb, let's use the sentence, I run. It's a very simple sentence and you can see the only word that relates to the verb run is the subject pronoun I. This is intransitive. To demonstrate a transitive verb, let's use the sentence, I eat cake. In this sentence, we can see that there are two words related to the verb eat. The first, I, is the subject, and the second, cake, is the direct object. Identifying direct objects can be a bit tricky. They are the things that the verb operates on. That is to say, in this example, what is being eaten. If we take another example, I kicked a ball, we can see that what I kicked was a ball, making the ball the direct object. Now that we have an idea of what a direct object is, we can look at direct object pronouns. As we learnt in our last episode, pronouns replace nouns to avoid repetition, a phenomenon called anaphora. So if I start with a slightly modified version of my original example, I ate a cake, and then expand it slightly to say, I ate it last night, I have now used a direct object pronoun in my second sentence. The word it has replaced cake. You may have already realized then that we will need a direct object pronoun that corresponds to each of the subject pronouns from our last episode. Let's go through these now. The direct object pronoun for je is me. For example, ils m'aiment bien, they like me. You can see in this example that the me is contracted before a vowel. This also happens before a silent H. The direct object pronoun for tu is te. For example, ils t'aiment bien, they like you. The same contraction is evident here. The direct object pronoun for il is le. Il l'aime bien, they like him. And you guessed it, the contraction of the e from le occurs again. For elle, the direct object pronoun is la. For example, il l'aime bien, they like her. You will notice this one is also contracted before a vowel or silent H. For nous, the direct object pronoun is exactly the same. It's nous. For example, ils nous aiment bien, they like us. For vous, the direct object pronoun is vous, also the same as the subject. For example, ils vous aiment bien, they like you. For il ou elle, the direct object pronoun is les. For example, ils les aiment bien, they like them. And that is the list of direct object pronouns in French. There is another important thing to note though when it comes to direct object pronouns, and that's where to place them. You might have noticed that in the examples, which are all declarative sentences, the direct object pronoun is placed between the subject pronoun and the verb. That's the general rule. It will be placed between the subject pronoun and the conjugated verb in declarative sentences. By the way, a declarative sentence is just a statement. In some compound tenses, like the futur proche, a tense I will present in my series on verbs, the position is between the auxiliary verb aller and the primary verb. Don't worry if this doesn't mean anything to you now. When using modal verbs like pouvoir, devoir, and falloir, the placement of the pronoun is between the modal verb and the primary verb too. Again, don't worry too much if this makes no sense to you at this point. I'll cover it when I look at modal verbs. When used with imperatives, the placement of pronouns in the positive imperative goes at the end after the verb, such as regarde-le, look at it. But in the negative, it reverts to its usual place in front of the verb. Ne le regarde pas, don't look at it. Again, I will look at this in more detail when I cover imperatives in French in my verb series. And that concludes my episode on direct object pronouns. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, please post a comment and I'll do my best to respond.